Hey teens, it's me Ashley. I have missed you guys. I haven't seen you in a while. I've missed our teen events, so I was thinking, in spirit of those teen events, that I would create a new video series where I give either a book recommendation or a movie recommendation or a TV series recommendation, and then I cook a recipe based on that recommendation, and we learn a couple cooking skills. So today I'm going to talk about A Bad Beginning, which is the first book in a series of unfortunate events. Now, A Bad Beginning is all about three siblings, Violet, who's 14, Klaus, who's 12, and Sunny, who's an infant, who lose their parents in a mysterious fire, and they go from guardian to guardian, trying to solve the mystery behind their parents' death. So, I love this book. I grew up reading this book. If you haven't read this book, then you should read this book, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. My favorite scene in A Bad Beginning is a scene where the three orphans are tasked by their guardian to create a dinner. The dinner that the guardian wants is called roast beef. But when Violet looks in the kitchen, she realizes that she doesn't have any of the ingredients for roast beef. What she does have is tomatoes and capers and anchovies and olives. And she thinks that she should go to her neighbor's house and look up a recipe that would utilize all these ingredients. The recipe she finds is called pasta puttanesca, which is a traditional Italian dish that uses a bunch of really salty ingredients and a tomato sauce. It's delicious. She and her siblings cook this recipe. They find some cool pasta at the grocery store. They cook this recipe for their guardian. The guardian hates it, but today we're going to cook this recipe and it's going to be delicious. We're going to love it. So let's cook. So pasta puttanesca is a tomato sauce base that has garlic and capers and olives and anchovies. Now, all those things are super salty on their own, but they are going to create great flavor and depth to the tomato sauce. So, in the book, I'm pretty sure that they had whole tomatoes that they broke up for the sauce, but in my version of this recipe, I have both diced tomatoes and tomato sauce that I'm going to use as the base. To the base, the children added olives and capers and garlic and anchovies. So what I have all these ingredients on hand because I love pasta puttanesca. I make it all the time. So we are going to sort of hybridize the book's recipe in my own recipe. So tomatoes, olives. These are caper berries, which are a type of flower bud that have been brined. If you've never had a caper, you should try a caper because it doesn't really taste like anything else, like it's its own flavor. It's also good advice just for any new ingredient you use is try it before you add it to something. So capers, lots of garlic, and in the book they used anchovy fillets, but I don't have anchovy fillets, I have this paste. If we were to use anchovy fillets, I would probably use the whole fish, which sounds kind of gross, but they're such small fish that they don't have a lot of bones. You can add them whole into almost any recipe you're using. So this is the book's ingredients right here. This is what I'm going to add to it today. I have half an onion and I have some butter that I'm going to saute the onion in. And then traditionally, I think red chili flakes are added to the sauce. So I'm going to add some of those too just to create more flavor. So I have all my ingredients recipe. The first step to anything you cook, to any cooking, is to prep everything. So I've said it before and I'll probably say it again. Most of cooking is just prep work and patience. The rest of cooking that's not prep work and patience is creativity. Before we can get to the creative part, we have to cut up everything and then adding the flavors and roasting and using heat That's the next step. So first we're gonna prep everything, make sure everything is ready to go, so when we are making that sauce, we can just add everything in and we don't have to cut along the way. All right, let's do some cutting. Okay, I said cutting, but I meant prep work. So we have to do all our prep work before we can even get to the sauce or the heat that the sauce is created from. So these tomatoes are obviously already prepped, so we don't need to do any work here. What we're going to work on is this onion, garlic, and the olives. So let's start with some skills, specifically knife skills. So if you are kind of scared of holding a knife, maybe you don't have a lot of experience with cutting up vegetables, now is the perfect time to practice, because the only way you can become proficient in knife skills is through practice. It takes a lot of time and patience. We are not going to speed through cutting all these vegetables. Instead, we're going to be precise. So when you're holding a knife, you don't want a guide finger out. It can create an imbalance in the knife when you have a guide finger. I saw a friend once cut a whole onion with her finger guiding the knife, and her hand must have been really tired at the end of that cutting. So we're not going to use a guide finger. What we're going to do in order to hold this knife well without creating risk for our cutting of the vegetables, we are going to choke the knife, which means we are going to use all of our fingers. We're going to hold the knife from the bottom and from the top, all right? Now this feels a little bit uncomfortable, I think, if you have not been cutting vegetables for a long time, or if you are nervous holding a knife, but choking this knife is actually the safest route for cutting vegetables. So we're going to choke the knife. When I'm cutting the onion, I'm also going to curl in my fingers so I don't cut my fingers. So that's cutting an onion. To cut or to chop up garlic, we're actually going to mince this. I'm going to use a lot of the garlic. So for all garlic, you have to peel out the outside, and then when I cut this, I'm just going to slice it up and down like this. And then my olives are the last thing. These are already pitted, they don't have the pits in them, but for these olives, I am going to cut them up into really small pieces. All right. Okay, so my onions are pretty translucent here. I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients that need to be sauteed. So I kept everything pretty large here, so my sister can pick out what she doesn't want to eat. But you can cut the pieces to whatever size you want to be, because when you're cooking, you make the rules. So there's some vegetables, and let's add our anchovy paste. I would recommend adding, if you're using anchovy paste, it's pretty intense, so maybe only a couple teaspoons. That should be good. And the capers. These are also really salty, so I'm not gonna add too much. So that's like a little over a teaspoon, another half teaspoon, and then I am going to do maybe a half a teaspoon of these red chili flakes. Now I'm adding all this stuff in to my pan. It looks a little crowded, that's okay. To get it all nice and caramelized, this will meld all those flavors together. The sooner you add the garlic to your saute, the less intense the flavors become. And the sooner you add the anchovy paste, the more that flavor will mellow out. Alright guys, I've added the tomato sauce. It's been simmering for a long time. I am now gonna teach you guys our second skill of the day. And the skill is how to properly season pasta water. So in this pan, I've added a couple teaspoons of salt. In this back pan, now I'm gonna add a couple more teaspoons of salt. you want your pasta water to be really salty. Salty like the sea, too salty to drink. That way, your pasta absorbs a lot of the flavor of the salt and it will taste really good. Now for the pasta, we also want to cook it al dente, which means that it has some texture. We're gonna cook it, my pasta says cook for 7 minutes. We're actually going to cook it for 6 minutes to give it some nice texture. All right, here is our final product. Let's give it a try. It is really good. It is a little bit briny. It's a little bit spicy. I don't know why Count Olaf would have denied this. It's delicious. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys learned something. Until next time, bye.